So let's talk a little bit about transmission. There is a popular idea about transmission in which one is given something by a teacher in a moment of intention and perhaps singular focus on you in particular. There is a transmission of the essence of the teaching. I think that this is real and possible, but that we should expand our idea of what transmission is to include many more types of occurrences and experiences. But also, we should consider a interpretation of transmission through the lens of simultaneity and equivalence. From the lens of emptiness, boundlessness, and the patterns that unfold out of there. So I'll circle back to that latter bit, and it's pretty hard to explain, and I may or may not do a good job. But my direct experiences with transmission are of several types. One is more along the lines of what I think probably first comes to mind when you think of it. And it is supported by kind of shamanic intent, a kind of, I don't know, what I've experienced is this kind of wide-eyed, and it's almost as if the eyes have a flash of light and there's something given to you. I received this from a couple of teachers and felt a very clear kind of supportive strength that came from it. I wouldn't say that I knowingly felt a clear kind of recognition, awakening kind of moment, but more of a lineage connection, a trust and faith kind of underlying support at that moment and in my practice following those moments. So I have also felt a similar kind of, these things are hard to explain, but when I first went to the Dragon Gate Caves Temple in 2008 with my teacher, Master Wu Zhongxian, and a group of his students, I felt a very clear resonance with the place. The place is extraordinary and has a history that I think maybe I won't go into now, but supports, makes sense of the kind of strength. But for example, it was the place in which one of the luminaries and immortals of our lineage and Taoism more broadly, Chu finished his cultivation, finished his realization, spending 7 years in a cave there. And it was apparently a community at the time, but then he became its leader, and it became a Taoist monastic community. The first, I believe, and supported by Genghis Khan, who was a student of Chuchuji's, became converted sitting on a rock there at the temple. But what I mean to talk about here is the place generally kind of got inside of me and stayed with me in this, which has this feeling of transmission, right? And then more specifically, when I meditated in the caves, certain caves in particular, the Three Immortals cave was just kind of around the side of the temple in a different valley. A little bit hard to get to and not open to the public per se. And it was my understanding that some of these things can get confusing in translation, but it's my understanding that that was the cave that Chuchuji was in. Secondarily, there's a cave way up on the cliff. It's a cliffside temple, the highest cave. It has this kind of feel like you're inside of the instrument of the earth. It's vibrating in this way. But this Three Immortals cave, this bigger cave, well-developed kind of network of space inside the mountain. After being in that cave and meditating there, sounding mantras and feeling that resonance, feeling presences, in the years that followed, that would remain inside of me and come up in meditation and in dreams, often populated by many immortals, lineage and otherwise. They're supporting me. And so this experience suggests to me a very clear transmission of place, from place, through being in that spot at that time, and being connected to the transmission over time of energetic inhabitants of the area. So that's a kind of transmission I think that we should recognize and include in our idea of what transmission is. Another one that I've experienced is through a book. And so I think we are kind of often reluctant to include in our idea of what's possible that we can get authentic, direct teachings from a book. We kind of think of it as support, as before and after a meeting with a teacher, and that's a useful way to think about it. But I have definitely had visceral transmission experiences from books, and often even a poorly translated book. One of these experiences, and maybe the most dramatic, I'll go into the qualities of that experience in my series on mapping experience. But for the purposes of this discussion, my point is that I was reading The Golden Flower, The Secrets of the Golden Flower, which is a well-known book describing practice and ideas. And the translation I was reading was by Thomas Cleary, whom we owe a great debt in certain ways, as a scholar and a bringer of things to the West for the first time in many cases. But in order to do that, he made many compromises, and he made a lot of choices in service of, I imagine, accessibility, and perhaps from a standpoint of arrogance, as I imagine it, but I could easily be wrong. In any case, the effect is that the text is not the text. The text is very far from the original text. But even so, I was reading The Golden Flower, and right that moment had a dramatic opening that I would describe in addition as a transmission from the Golden Flower text, from the author of the Golden Flower text, Wen Shiyin Shi. Or that was the source of the practice, I guess. But I think that in your own path and experience, you should be open to that, and also open to reading for translations should they be the only one available. And then as I went along my path and became more and more open, it would sometimes be that when I was reading a certain text or a certain part of a certain text, my third eye would very tangibly vibrate. I came to be able to use that as a kind of antenna for authenticity, or antenna that I was understanding correctly, even if the text was pointing in a different direction. And I've had that experience with some Dzogchen texts as well, outside of the Taoist tradition. And maybe that's all I'll say about that now. Trying to think if there was an additional aspect of transmission that I wanted to touch on. I think there was, but this video is getting long, so I'll leave it there and maybe return to it if there's enough additional material.